greeting. Hola, un gusto.
Un placer, Nancy. Cuando vi tu nombre, yo dije, ah, es de las mías. Aquí tenemos un representante, otra representante latina,
Claro
Nancy
que sí.
Tapia.
Claro que sí. Mucho gusto. But
Igualmente,
we're gonna do the interview in English.
no problem.
So we can throw some Spanish in there. I mean, why not?
Yeah, I mean, the movie has subtitles. We can subtitle this interview, no problem.
That's right. So you take us into this dinner full of so many surprises where I'm thinking, okay, I figured out what's going on, what's the dynamic. You just throw another ball at us.
I try to keep everyone entertained. Don't want anybody falling asleep at the theater.
Oh, definitely not. If anything, it also made us hungry. It made me like want wine. And actually, I did pause to grab some wine because that's the way to enjoy it.
Good for you. That is exactly what I want. I wish everybody could do that while watching the movie. That was the idea.
Now, let's talk about the filming. This was during COVID.
It was. So the idea was, we were very lucky to get everything moving along very fast. So I already had the idea. The script wasn't written. I have a very good friend who is the VP of Pinewood Studios in the Dominican Republic. We have a branch of, the famous Pinewood Studios, the British Pinewood Studios. They opened a branch in the Dominican Republic, and they have their own production company called Lantica Media. There are our co-producers on this movie, and he said, "Listen, I have a slot that freed up to make a movie. Do you have anything?" And I had this idea, I had no script, and I kind of pitched him the idea, and he's like, "Okay, I love it. We're shooting in like 4 months or 3 months." And I'm like, "No way, absolutely." I'm like, "I have to be honest with you. I came clean. I'm like, I haven't done the script." He's like, "Yeah, I'm sure you'll do great. Like, don't worry about it. I'm sure you have it in time." So he just like took a vote of confidence. And actually, another great friend of mine, Israel Cardenas, who we worked together, I went to him. I'm like, "Man, this is insane. I'm going to say no." And he's like, "Listen, they're telling you that you can make a movie in 3 months. How many times is that going to happen? Go for it." So he pushed me, so I wrote this script actually in 6 days. It was 6 days, practically no sleep. Um, and the idea had come with a conversation I had with another friend of how we would love to meet, what would happen, what we would have to do to meet in, because Dominican Republic had very stringent laws. They had very, very strict laws on measures on curfew. You couldn't have anybody over your house who's not like immediate family. It was and you would literally get arrested, just like in the movie. So, so the idea came in the pandemic. I wrote it in the first draft in 6 days. Then, I had a month to fix it up. So we also shot it in pandemic. So what that did was it was very good for the movie because it was very intense, and the whole process was like encapsulated in this hysteria of the pandemic, which is in the movie. And it's very real, because it was written in the pandemic and then we shot it right away in the pandemic. So it was very immediate. And how do you say? I'm going to say it in Spanish because I don't know what vigencia, tenía mucha vigencia, era vigente eh, el tema. So that was, kind of how it all developed.
Yes, it's acting, but it was very current times. So
Absolutely.
I'm sure it wasn't that hard
No,
for the cast.
no. Well, it's really funny. So I had a COVID scare. So they had protocols in place that if I did test positive for COVID, I would have to direct the movie from outside. They were sound stages, there's these huge sound stages. So they were going to set up like a mini tent for me, which I thought was like the most degrading thing ever. I would be like in a tent outside with a walkie-talkie and the screens for, like the displays of what the camera was seeing, and I would have to direct. So that sounded like a nightmare. Luckily, I didn't have COVID. And then my production designer, who was like my right hand, Chahin, we had a meeting. So in order to get to the studios, you had to get tested, right? And she was late. We were running late, so I kind of asked for, like not an exception, but I'm like, well, we'll meet outside, whatever. And we got to meet. And I went to the bathroom, and when I came back, there was everybody were like with masks and hazmat suits, like out of a horror movie. And they were like, "Yeah, Shaina just tested positive." So that's where my COVID scare came. So I lost my production designer a week before shooting, which was, and it was, we would get tested once every 2 days. We would hear these stories of so and so in the crew. is positive, so maybe this person. And it was very, that neurotic kind of paranoia that we all had, that's in the movie, was very present during the shooting.
So you had a Carmen moment.
Oh yes, I had a Carmen, exactly, exactly.
And I mean, let's talk about the cast. These were hard times, tough times. So was it easy to get the cast to be like, sure, let's film during the pandemic?
Well, I was very lucky. I mean, I guess all of us, we were kind of desperate to do something, just like to have some type of creative, how do you say, venting creatively, do something, because we had all been locked up for so long that I think that outweighed all the sacrifices that needed to be made, because in order to do the movie, everybody had to create a bubble. So a lot of these people had to be far away from their families. They had to isolate. But I think that the fact that we were all so desperate just to do something, to see people, just was like everybody that once we confirmed every actor and told them what we needed from them and the security measures, they were said yes right away. They were like, okay. Some of them came with their families. Luis José Germán, who plays Mateo, the chef, we were able to get his wife. He has a very young daughter. They were able to come in with us into the bubble. And then, yeah, everybody, Nashla, who plays Carmen, she's my wife. Um, and so that was obviously very easy. Although when I had my COVID scare, they separated. We were in different apartments. So it was kind of like, a long distance relationship for like a week and a half. And yeah, everybody else just jumped in. I think they loved the project. They read the script and fell in love with it. And there was no problem in that sense, luckily.
In that case, it was your wife you got to see get arrested. That was quite intense.
Yeah, very much so. And also the character is very different to her. She's very like she's a pacifist. She's not like Carmen's a bit of a hellraiser. So, it's always curious to be like, is that side of you there latent, or are you a very good actress, or both, Like, is that really there? Maybe, we'll have to find out in the future.
My theory is that if she hadn't done that, then Chumpy would have been out there and no one would have taken the
Absolutely.
risk to bring him in.
It was, in the script at the beginning, it was like, how do we sell the fact that she goes after him? We see the consequences, and then they automatically almost go and get the body after they and I was going back to that a lot, and then I'm like, no, yeah, it's what you say, Nancy. It's like the fact is that she's proving to them that's worth the risk of getting arrested. This is like, family that's there. And it's not that like, oh, there's a risk of getting arrested. Well, even though there's a risk of getting arrested, it's worth it because he's our brother. So kind of like humanity prevails. There's these moments of like complete, it's like watching civilization go down the drain with these friends, like all the terrible things they say to each other and what they really think and all that. But then there's these little moments of hope that it's like, that like humanity prevails. And I think my idea was to do kind of like an analogy or a metaphor of what we were seeing in the pandemic, because we saw, people being incredibly selfish, like, yeah, we laugh now, but I don't know if you remember like the toilet paper scares. People would just buy like all the toilet paper, like, and you like you like you would never need that amount of toilet paper. You're leaving people without toilet paper, and then you would see acts of just incredible kindness in the middle of this apocalyptic event.
Additional characters is I feel like it was the house, the location, and of course the food. So how did you find the perfect dishes and the perfect location for this film?
So the house is a set. We built it in the soundstage. Um, I had a very specific idea because I have a family that live in the colonial zone where this movie takes place in fiction. And I grew up in a lot of these colonial houses, so I had like the perfect idea. By the time that was also very good because we didn't have that much pre-production time or development time. So I came in with a very clear idea of how I wanted the layout, like dimensions, color palette. The colors of the house are a lot of my childhood house growing up, so I knew I wanted that. Um, and then obviously I work with a fantastic production designer we've worked together in all of my movies. and she knows me very well, so that was also very easy to create. But yes, I wanted something that was had enough character that it could hold the movie, the location, but not too much that it was overwhelming and would take away from the action. It had to be just the right amount. And it has to be something as well, at the same time, that is magnificent and beautiful, but it can also be a little bit overwhelming and claustrophobic. You feel like they're stuck in there. So how do you do that? So we kind of, we played around with the different dimensions, height of the ceilings, but then the rooms can be a little bit more, we had like little safe havens, like the bathroom that were you felt more cozy, and then at the same time could feel a little more stuffy. So that was, very, very, we luckily had that very clear what we wanted. And then the food was more complicated because we had such little pre-production time that we kind of like invested in everything else, invested our time and attention into everything else. Because I don't know, we kind of took it for granted. I'm a foodie, obviously. I love and I knew it had to be a character, but we were like, okay, designing the house, rehearsing with the actors, and then all of a sudden we're like, a couple weeks out, and I'm like, oh my God, we haven't defined the food yet, and what are we gonna do? So I knew what I wanted the food to be directly associated with the chapter. You know how it's divided into chapters or into like, plates or steps. And like for example, the entree, the main dish, I knew that I wanted to be something we start getting into a darker ambiance in the movie and it starts getting more intense and all that. So I wanted something to be, to have like the visual, figurative aspect to accompany that. Dessert, I wanted it to be very violent and dark. And so I knew all that had to like, so I didn't know what the plate was. And I knew that we would have to create this plate. It wasn't like something that would exist. So I pitched some ideas to our food stylist, who was fantastic. And obviously he was, able to emulate I knew I wanted something that was like see-through and dark and murky because we're talking about a lake. We're talking about a body like this, the visual Ophelia, that we see this woman in a gown like sinking into the bottom of a lake. I wanted to be able to emulate that into a dish. So we kind of, found these elements that could, and he was able to design through kind of the elements that I gave him the the dish itself. But it was hard, and it was, it was the last week, we had to rush everything, and we were able to do it in the last week.
Gonna try to wrap up with you, but first I want to congratulate you because your film
Thank you.
is very meaningful during the time it was filmed. The struggle to put together, how you just bang a script in 6 days. And now
I'm still recovering. I'm still recovering.
still recovering, and the fact that
Yeah.
you're presenting Dominican Republic.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I'm very proud. For me, that's already like, to be honest, that's such a gift. That in itself is an award. And I'm very, very proud. Obviously, very proud to be Dominican, and I'm also very proud that this movie, we get to show we're doing something a little bit different. And I love that. I always strive to do that, to be able to make movies that could be enjoyed everywhere in the world, but that have a Dominican DNA, so it could be like a stepping stone for our culture.
Thank you so much for your time again. Congratulations.
Thank you, Nancy.
And I guess next year we will see what you're up to in Argentina right now.
Hopefully, hopefully. Thank you so much for your time, Nancy.
You're welcome. Thank you. Felicidades.
Gracias. Un abrazo.
Felices fiestas.
Igual, igual.